Welcome to Pacer Nursing Power Hour, your go-to spot for real tips and real talk in the world of nursing.
So plug in, scrub up, and let's go. This is Pacer Nursing Power Hour, where students get powered up.
Love it.
Ugh, God. Okay.
So, last week we talked about, I feel like I need to get comfortable for this because this is a good one.
Yeah.
So last week we
Yeah.
talked about the Board of Nursing.
And the
We talked
ethical
about
foundations.
ethics.
Yeah.
And we are officially coming clean about our guest
Yes.
today.
Yes. No.
So we have had the honor and privilege
Oh, such a privilege.
to interview Redonda Vaught.
Yes.
If you don't know her, you need to Google her. She's a very interesting, detailed story. She is a nurse.
It's
if you
quite
didn't guess
pivotal
that.
for
Yes.
healthcare. It's a very pivotal and controversial case
Yes.
in healthcare.
Yes. So today we are going to go through what changed her career
Yep.
and how then in the next coming weeks did this story change nursing.
Yes.
So we're excited.
I
know that's our word, but we are still excited every week.
This is epic. This is epic.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just gonna jump in.
Yeah, so you are a junkie when it comes to legal stuff.
I am a nerd when it comes to this. I nerded out hard. Like I probably watched 3 hours worth of YouTube's interviews with her. I pulled off 56-page original CMS reports, Tennessee
I
Bureau of
love it.
Investigation. Like I pulled it all.
So this is not my world. I do not enjoy this. I have a brother that's a lawyer. I let him stay in that lane. I stay in the medical lane, and I just text him my questions. I do the same for my sister-in-law, and that's just my role I have with legalities. However, I've gained lots of insight. So I'm
Yeah.
excited for you to teach me more about this story, and I'll just ask my questions as we go along. So set the scene for us.
So this was 2017.
2017.
So if you don't know, Redonda Vaught was a registered nurse in Nashville, Tennessee, working in the ICU, neuro ICU at Vanderbilt Hospital. With it, hopefully everyone understands that reputable facility, Vanderbilt.
A massive facility.
Massive. They
You
have
told me like
17,000 employees. And plus, it's an academic medical facility as well. So they're a teaching hospital. So her case all stemmed down to. So first of all, we have this spoken rule in hospitals where you make a medication error or a patient falls or something happens.
Yeah.
There's an internal reporting system within the hospital. It's based on the premise that it's a non-punitive self-report. That's the underlying factor of everything. Hospitals, if you own it and say, I did it, and they investigate and blah, 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 then you're not held, like you're not fired automatic. Anyway, okay. So Redonda administered a wrong dose medication and ended up causing a patient's death. Now, let's start this by saying we have to remember, no matter what our personal feelings are, what our ideas are, that a family lost a loved one and that a patient lost their life. We're not going to take away from that gravity of that and the importance of that.
Yeah, by
that
no
is
means
what
are we belittling.
So when we say it's life or death and we're teaching you, this is case in point.
Yeah, literally.
I mean, we cannot get any more literal than this.
Yeah.
Okay, so
neuro ICU.
Neuro ICU.
Day after Christmas, right?
It was 12/26 of 2017. Now, Now, I'm gonna say if we had to recreate these events, we couldn't because there were so many formidable forces
Mhm.
that you had no idea. So, before this date, there is a hurricane in September 20th, 2017, Hurricane Maria, and I'm telling you this for purpose,
It
for a
does
reason.
play into
It
the
does.
story.
Hit and landed and essentially decimated Puerto Rico,
Mhm.
which why that's important is because Baxter Medical, which is one of the top 3, 5 brands, that make medical things like your masks, gloves,
Mhm.
you know,
Med packaging,
instruments.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so many things, medications. So they had 3 large facilities. Now, outside of this, I knew about this. It created a worldwide shortage in medications. Like, and I remember this as a nurse. Every month we would have to have pharmacy would send out, okay, here's our shortage for this month.
Mhm.
This is what you're going to see and this is what you're going to need to do. Like IV bags of normal saline. You couldn't get them.
Yeah.
You couldn't. All right, so there was a massive medication shortage. So hospitals were relying on so hospitals set up agreements, like you're going to be my main source of these drugs. So, but other companies make them. So what happened is because one single company could not fill that void, we got every vendor, yeah.
Fillings, yeah.
So hospitals, you could open up a drawer of Tylenol, say for
Mhm.
instance, and there would be 5 different
They all
packaging.
look different.
Every single thing looked different. You could have IV vials
Mhm.
of the same medication, but it would be in different colors, even down to the concentration. Like one
Oh
could be
gosh,
5
yeah.
milligrams in 1 ml, and another one in the same drawer would be 10 milligrams in 1 ml.
Yeah,
So
that's scary.
that's a big deal because
Yeah.
we all know about partial dose, especially with peds. That's a big deal. So there's that factor.
Mhm.
And then prior to this event on 11/2 in 2017, so 2 months, almost a month and a half after the hurricane hit, we're really seeing heightened medication not there. This 17,000 employee facility, like 5 buildings, went through a change in their electronic medical record. They went from McKesson, which is it's been so long since I've even charted on McKesson, but they went converted to Epic. So if you
Which is
do
a drastic change.
phenomenal drastic change.
Mhm.
And so if anyone has lived through an EHR adoption, nothing works. Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. There's the communication between systems because we know there's so many interdependent systems,
Mhm.
much like interprofessional disciplines.
Right.
There are
All the
interdependent.
technology needs to
Yeah,
overlap and
like
and communicate with each other.
like not only the computer that I'm charting on needs to go to the right patient's chart, it needs to go into the CT scanner when they pull it
Mhm.
up, or they need to be able
To
to
the Pyxis, it
pick
needs to
this
come
or
up to the
yeah,
pharmacy.
so it all needed to jive, and that's not an easy feat. If
Mm-mm.
you've ever been through it, I've been through 2 EMR transitions. One where we went from paper to electronic, which that I'm gonna say that took 6 months,
Yeah,
and it was a 2,000 people total facility.
yeah, much smaller.
When I went from Cerner to Epic, and even in a hospital, a teaching facility, it still took 3 to 4 months to get every single discipline and everyone taught without having to have super users available on the floor. It's a massive transition.
Mhm.
So there's extrinsic factor number 2. So you don't have the medications you need that are used to seeing, and then you don't have your EMRs are there's some issues. So big flags. Okay, now we are combining it with the time and season. So 11/2. Now, Katie, you know this just as much as I do. That is holiday season. Now,
Mhm.
even though there's no differentiation for nurses. There's no holiday. You work.
Yeah.
So there's really no like big deal. But in the rest of the world, people have a week off that 3rd or 4th week of Thanksgiving. I am 56 and I still doubt myself on whether it's the 3rd or the 4th week in November. I'm
I just
not
look at
gonna
the
lie.
calendar.
I'm like, I just like, yeah, well, okay, it seems late this year, but or it seems early. I don't know. But then beginning December 15th, so that's at the end of November. And
Mhm.
then 2 weeks later, everyone starts taking and going away for Christmas.
Yeah, Christmas holiday.
So, that hospital echoes because
Yeah.
you're working on minimal staffing.
Yeah.
Okay, third extrinsic factor. This is the day after Christmas. So, but backing up to those holiday seasons, so you have medications not there, and typically the people that are there to help with that are taking those days off for Christmas
Mhm.
and Thanksgiving. So they're
Right.
not there. You don't have your resources. And then you have this electronic medical record that's not, populating where it needs to populate. Nothing's, carrying over appropriately. And then those also are the people that are needed that take those holidays off.
Mhm.
Okay, now you are at the day
Day
after
after
Christmas,
Christmas.
and we all know that is a skeletal staffing day. It's not supposed to be, but it
Yeah, it's not
is.
considered a quote unquote holiday,
But,
but
if you
yeah,
have,
kids, you're like, I mean, it's just a day that a
it,
lot of people do request off.
yeah, because we're either working Christmas Eve or Christmas Day,
Mhm.
and we want another day
Yeah.
off around there.
Sure.
Okay, so but before this, on 12/24 of 17, so 2 days before the event, the day before Christmas, Christmas Eve, patient was admitted with an intraparenchymal hematoma of the brain. In other words, they had a bleed in the brain.
Bleeding in the brain.
Okay. Uh, she had vision loss.
Okay.
And she had some cardiac arrhythmias and so she had a lot of comorbidities going on. So she came in. And from what I understand, there was always the knowledge that hemorrhage was due to some form of metastatic process. So they
Yeah.
knew that there was something big hanging on. She was admitted on 12/24. So she had all these neuro issues. She was admitted into the neuro ICU. But she progressed and she became alert and oriented. So, you know how they have those units where you have 30 beds, but 10 of them are for step down beds,
Yes. Yes.
but you don't physically move them out of the hospital. I
Right.
mean, out of that unit, but
Yeah.
they're still there. So that was how this unit was. So she was downgraded to step down in neuro ICU. She was alert and oriented from what I can see in the charting. And yes, I have not accessed anything
Yeah.
that is not fully public.
And just for students, we drill HIPAA constantly. We are able to talk about these things and say patient names and whatnot because this case did go to court and literally every detail of it was shared with the
It was
public.
evidentiary,
Yes.
so it's out there.
So yeah, HIPAA does not apply in this situation. It's one of the very few situations where we are able to divulge all of the information and learn from it. The beauty of that is we can take this situation when normally situations are hush hush, but we can look at every detail of this and try to do whatever we can to
To
prevent it
learn
from
from it,
happening again.
and that's exactly the perspective we want everyone to have, is
Mhm.
that these things happened,
Yeah.
and hold buckle up because
Yeah.
it doesn't
This is
stop here.
so just so
Okay,
educational.
so the patient, the day after Christmas, she was in ICU. Redonda was there. She had been an employee for about, what, 21 months. She had she was a relatively new graduate nurse because she was only in her 3rd year of practice,
Mhm.
which we call that your toddler years, you know? You're still getting your nurse
Yeah.
feet. Um, but, this was her dream job. She didn't get hired on in Vandy or to Vanderbilt right away. They didn't hire new
She spent
grads.
9 months in a different
9 months.
facility and
Yep.
then shifted over.
Yep, she got her dream job. This was her dream job, and she still to this day says this
The
was her
best job.
best job ever.
Yeah.
Again, and a preface that she never had anything negative to
Oh,
say.
absolutely.
Nothing. Nothing.
You'll see. You'll see.
Okay, so the doctors decided because um, uh, the patient, we knew she had some neurological issues going on, and it was a metastatic process. So typically for those metastatic processes, in order to get a full view, they decided to order a PET scan for her. So that's a positive electron tomography.
Sure, sounds good.
So it's a radiological diagnostic exam, and it's literally consists of you put there's a nuclear isotope that's entered into your body via IV, and it has to circulate. So, your heart's beating and it has to get to all the parts so that when you put it under this particular
Machine scanner, yeah.
radiography, um, those hot spots are going to light up. That's how we do bone scans, to see if you have tumors everywhere or metastases everywhere.
Mhm.
These are bone scans. So a PET scan, they put it in for her because they wanted to see the extent of her metastasis.
And that alone, that type of scan is critical to this story because there's a time frame
Yeah.
involved
So you have
with the medicine you're
Yeah,
taking.
you gotta give it 45 minutes to circulate to get everywhere,
Mhm.
and then it's a good 30 minutes on the table to get it done, and then you gotta get rid of those, pull back as much as you can to flush out the isotopes, and I only know this.
I didn't know
Y
the after part.
Yeah,
That's
they
interesting.
actually, nuclear med goes up to a certain area on the roof across the street and has a dispensary of where they like, it's this you have to I mean,
There's a certain way to do it, yeah.
yeah, it's nuclear, like, are you
Hmm,
gonna bomb someone? I don't
interesting.
think it's the bombable nuclear
Yeah.
meds, but still.
Okay,
So
cool. Fun fact. I learned something
it's a
new.
big deal. And you're in a radiology department, which many people do not know this. In fact, Redonda did not know it.
Yeah, that was fascinating.
Radiology is lined the walls are lined with lead, people, and they
Which I think we all know that, we just don't appreciate it. Like,
yeah,
we know we don't want X-ray going,
yeah,
through
everywhere.
walls and stuff,
Yeah,
harm other people that don't need it. But it just the stopping and pausing, being like, "Oh, wait, yeah.
yeah, so that's why
That played a role in this story."
most radiology departments cannot chart in the electronic record like we do up on the floor because of that connectivity. So you don't have a lot of access to things. Okay, so that plays a big part of it. So PET scan was ordered at 2 o'clock on the patient. There was even dialogue about why they even needed it, but the doctors really wanted it. And from what I can infer, and from what I've heard Redonda say on several other interviews, was that the family knew this was kind of the end.
Okay.
Okay, so the patient's name is Charlene Murphy, and we're not going to ever forget her, ever.
No.
So Redonda came into work that day. She was assigned, you have what bed 1, 2, and 3, or 1 and 2 are yours. These are
Mhm.
step down beds, so you're gonna have 4 patients. But one of the roles in that unit was what's called an all-call nurse, which we know more as like the float nurse.
Float.
Yeah, just for the unit. So she carried the beeper, so to speak, the pager or whatever, the radio.
Mhm.
So if a nurse within the unit, and from what I can understand, I've never been into Vanderbilt, but it was a pretty big unit. And so she would just float and help nurses, like pull blood.
Basically an extra set of hands for whatever needed, but she was still a nurse, so she could there was a lot more within her scope than, like, a patient care tech.
Exactly, exactly. And some of you need that in an ICU.
Yeah.
It's like in an ER. You go in, everyone goes in, gets the patient settled, and then you go back to your other patients.
Yeah.
That's what you do.
We didn't call it an all-call nurse, and I don't know what we even called it, but we did have that in the ER when I worked in the ER.
You were floated.
Um,
We floated. You had
but
your
it wasn't
charge
ju
nurse and float.
Oh, see, ours was a little bit different. We had a charge nurse, but you were assigned, like, you were the chosen one for that day. We had a buddy system, so you
Mm.
had your buddy, but then there was also someone that floated between all the buddies.
Ah,
So I don't know what we called it.
well, we just had a float, like,
I was thinking about
back in my day, I love
it.
saying that now, the ER across the street, when we were only 15 no, 15-ish beds? Yeah. Um, you had the red side and you had the blue side. So,
Yeah.
red team, blue team.
Yeah.
And so you were red float or blue float.
Oh, okay.
And you floated on those,
Those
like,
groups.
well, now it'd be 10, 11, 12.
Mhm.
No, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 critical rooms,
Mhm.
17, 18, 19, 20, and then 21.
Gotcha.
That was red. Okay. All right. So anyway, so she was the all-call nurse for the day.
Okay.
And in addition, this was Christmas. There was a new graduate that chose her to be his preceptor. Now, the good thing about this is that he had been working as a tech previously. So
You've been in the environment.
he knew the culture, he knew, the arena, the seascape. However, she was still relatively new to Vanderbilt. Again, huge facility. It took me 6 months when I worked across the street at our, level 1 to A, know which elevators to use to get to a certain room, and then B, which way to get off.
I mean,
Like,
seriously.
I have
I did.
been
I had to go down to surgery during clinical the other day, and I was like, "Okay, pause. I need to get my bearings." And I did. I made one wrong turn, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, they are in the OR upstairs. I need to get this equipment."
I'm telling you, like,
But it does. You do. You're like, even in a small
I
facility, I
can't tell
could
you
not imagine Vanderbilt.
how many times I wandered around with patients at 3 AM
Dude,
taking them back. I'm like, "Oh, we're supposed to go this way," 'cause
scenic.
patients like, we've been gone a long time. Am I ever gonna get to my room?" Like, so
Oh, geez. It's big.
it's big. So, and the point I'm trying to make is that there are certain things that you don't know of if you don't go down there, and radiology is one of those. Typically, and especially in facilities like this, you're going to have an interventional radiology nurse, if not a team.
Mhm.
I did that across the street. I was one of 2. Hard job, very hard job. And again, like, the second I heard this come out, I could see the environment. I knew
How things unfolded.
exactly. Okay, so she was all call. She had a new grad with her
New grad. She's precepting. It's the day after
s-
Christmas. She's at a big facility.
that just had, they're scouring for medications and they just switched to Epic.
Yeah.
Okay, so order for PET scan was put in for Mrs. Murphy. Her primary nurse, which was another young gentleman
Mhm.
in the ER. Remember, she not
In the
in the
IC.
in the
In
neuro
IC.
ICU, but she was a step down patient in the neuro ICU. The primary nurse could not take her to PET scan. So typically, anytime a patient leaves an ICU unit, you're accompanied by a nurse.
Right.
You have to be monitored. You're in the unit for a reason. You're
Mhm.
monitoring. So apparently, though, her condition had been downgraded and she was stable, and the physician had wrote an order: patient may transport to radiology without monitoring. Okay, doctor's order, right thing to do, right?
Okay, so that was documented.
That was documented.
Interesting. I didn't know that tidbit.
Yep.
Okay.
And then so at 2 p.m. that was ordered. PET scan was ordered. 2:47, the doctor put in an order for Versed because the patient got down to radiology, and was anxious. So the radiology technician had called the primary nurse to say she might need something. Typically, radiology technicians don't get enough props.
Mhm.
They're very, very knowledgeable in their job.
Okay.
Very knowledgeable.
That's
And
why you were there.
yeah, oh no, I learned from them. Like, they know what that X-ray looks like when they take it. They
Yeah.
don't have to say we have to. I mean, they have to say that we're
I know. I'm like, I know you know, but they're like, the doctor's gonna
yeah.
read this and
Just
get you
tell
results. I'm
me.
like, but I know you know.
I know you know. Yeah, exactly. All right. So the primary nurse called the doctor. The doctor put in the order for Versed. Prior to that, and there's no documented time when she got called, Redonda had gotten called because she had the all call radio with her
Mhm.
preceptee. There was a stroke patient that came in through the ER. And so the ER needed help. And this is relatable.
Mhm.
Going through because they wanted to do, I think, a swallow study on her down in the ER.
This is a different patient.
Different patient,
Okay. Okay.
not even in the neuro ICU,
Okay.
but Redonda was a resource,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay?
That was her role that day.
Yeah, and so ER said, "Hey, let me call up to neuro ICU. I can't we had a baby, like a mom coming in by ambulance that was in labor. Let me call labor and delivery and get an
That's not what I do. Let me call L&D.
L&D,
Yeah, it's
come
the same
down." You know,
concept.
I mean, that's normal. That's a
Uh-huh.
normal thing that we've done.
Yeah.
I've done. I've been
Yeah.
called. I've been called to the floor to start an IV. Oh, okay. So that's
Yeah, let's call
normal.
the people that do this on a regular
If you
basis.
have a resource available, you're going to call it.
Mhm.
ER called it. So while they were down there, now granted, she has a preceptee. She's it sounded like she was a wonderful, wonderful preceptor because
Mhm.
she was just not doing the things, but she was talking about why she's doing the things.
Explaining,
Yeah,
teaching.
teaching. While she was about to start that is when she got the page or the radio call to go over to PET scan because the primary nurse who had sent Miss Murphy down for her PET scan could not come down to administer Versed. He had other patients. That's what the float nurse was there for.
Yeah.
Um, Redonda said, okay. Now, it's important to know she had never been in that department
In IR.
and
In
radiology.
radiology. Okay.
And you typically don't.
Yeah.
You don't go
Yeah.
there. You don't.
That's
The only
not
reason I
what I
know
do.
so well is because I've been an IR nurse, you know? I've never been in the radiology department across the street.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know where they are.
Mhm.
I mean, I have an idea, but like I get lost.
Mhm.
So she did not know. So there's always that one door that you know to enter. She had to ask for directions how to get there.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a huge point because when she opened the door, you can see the double doors opening with a badge.
Yep.
Yep, you can hear it, and there's no one there.
Yeah,
It's
day
the
after
day after Christmas.
Christmas. Yeah.
It's the day after Christmas, and typically,
We're only doing scans for, like, pertinent, very important
yes,
reasons today.
yep.
There's no scheduled things today.
No, and your radiology tech is up doing bedside,
Mhm.
portable bedside, so
Yeah.
things like that. No one was around. She made the point to say the only way she recognized she had never met this patient. Remember, this patient came in when she was not working. So she came into work 2 days later. Patient was admitted 12/24. This is 12/26. First time Redonda's ever laid eyes on her.
Okay.
The only reason she knew that that was the patient she was supposed to come take care of was because of the bed she was laying in. She was laying in the hallway on her bed from ICU, neuro ICU, and they're labeled which department.
Interesting. Okay.
So she's like, "Oh, okay. Well, that's got to be our patient." So she goes up. She does.
The
Hi, my name's
checks. Yeah.
Redonda. Tell me your name. Tell me your birthday. Patient identifiers, right? She's like, "I've been told you need something for sedation, blah, blah, blah." Yeah, okay. So again, the isotope had been already pushed about
Her clock
25
has
minutes.
started.
Yes. So there was about 20 minutes left on the clock, and Redonda knew that. She knew it wasn't emergent, but there was a sense of urgency. Okay. So she gets down there. I'm giving you Versed. She goes to find their medication dispensing system was AccuDose, which I have worked with before. Um, and I was really purposely looking for that because when we migrated to Epic as well, AccuDose had many, 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 many problems.
Gotcha.
It wasn't transferring over the orders, especially stat orders. They weren't profiled correctly. I mean, there was just
You've
a
experienced
yeah,
that.
there's just like I, I was like, I can feel this. I can feel
Mhm.
this in my bones. So, she went into and she found the AccuDose, which is not anywhere. I mean, when I worked in IR, you pulled just vials of Versed and fentanyl for
Yeah.
your day and kept it in your pocket.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, scary. So she had to go hunt down uh, a, AccuDose, like the actual where
Yeah,
you
like,
pull the medication
where
from.
is it?
And so but then there was issue because she didn't see the order. So she pulled up the patient's profile. it wasn't there. She looked in stat, it wasn't there. She looked in PRN, wasn't there. Called the doctor, logged out of the system, called the doctor back again. He said, "It's there, it's there, it's there." She confirmed it's there.
The pharmacy. Call the
The
pharmacy,
She
right?
called the
Yeah.
pharmacy. It's there, it's there, it's there. He pulled it up, it wasn't there, and radiology tech is going, "Hello, we've got 18
Like,
more minutes. We gotta go, we
hello.
gotta go."
Yeah.
So she's like, "Okay." Now, knowing AccuDose, there's flags everywhere, nothing's flowing smoothly. So she opens up AccuDose, she logs in, and the way you can search for, because she's like, "Okay, it's not in her profile, but I have 18 minutes to go. I need to hurry up." So I don't know who's blowing up my phone.
Mm.
Um, so she was talking to her preceptor about, after they get this simple push done, and I'm using the word simple, not her. She never once used that. In my mind, that's what it felt like to me,
Yeah.
because they needed to go back and get that
Yeah.
salo
You're like
study
always
done.
kind of
So she's juggling these.
saying your thoughts and thinking ahead when you have a precepty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's like, "Okay, when we get back over there, what are we gonna do? Swallow study, blah blah blah." And so she types in VE, and there's a lot of conversation about she only typed in VE versus the whole word. But she made a point saying not only was she looking under brand names, and you can do this in AccuDose, you can look for medication in brand names, and you can look for it in generic names,
She did
and that's
both.
both.
During the court case, she said that.
Yep, yep. So she did, and she's what she saw.
Hmm.
She opened up the drawer, and she opened the drawer, and she even said, "Yeah, it was not labeled as the same as the others." But again, that's been our norm lately. When you
Hmm.
open up a
Because of the
medication,
hurricane,
yep,
nothing
because of
looks
nothing
normal.
looked normal. So she drew it up. She even drew up flushes. Um, Now, it was a solvent. She had to reconstitute it, which was another flag on the play.
Hmm.
Versed typically is only liquid.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Vecuronium, she ended up pulling vecuronium, which she had to reconstitute. She even labeled, there are pictures of her bio bags, and we all use those bio bags for everything,
Hmm.
not just blood. She had her flushes, she had her syringes. No, I mean, the syringes weren't labeled that I could see, but
Yeah.
again, we always also use the clear tape and write
Yeah.
on it, and it's not always discernible, and it's how many years later. Still in evidence, still in those biobags. So, she pushed the medication.
Which, for those that don't know, vecuronium is a paralytic drug.
It's
It's
a
typically used for like intubation, procedures.
surgeries.
Yes.
Yes. So, it literally, you're conscious, but you can't
Which, I don't know why I hadn't thought of this before. Why was that even in there?
because if you have an ICU patient and they're starting to wake
To
up,
buck.
you wanna give them some more Vec and put them down.
Okay.
Yeah. So, they would keep those drugs on there.
Okay.
Yeah. It makes
Okay.
sense.
I'll accept that answer.
Okay.
Keep going.
Okay.
Enlighten me more.
Okay, so she gave her the push, flushed it. The patient it was saline locked.
Hmm.
Um, and then she put the meds back in her pocket. She still had the all call, and the radiology tech was like, "Okay, thanks." And I guess because it was a paralytic, it looked, the Miss Murphy appeared to be calmer because they were supposed to be
Okay.
giving her the sedative Versed. So that's the normal expectation. She's calmer. Okay, period.
Yeah.
Now, if you're not aware, from my recollection, and the two ones that I've been in, PET scans, because it's a nuclear medication, you need an extra layer of protection. Those leaded vests are not going to cut it. You stand behind a lead wall.
Mhm.
Typically, there's a slither of a window. It may change from facility, but I don't know what theirs looked like. But I do know the tech is not right there. Okay.
Like
It's
not within hand holding distance.
No,
Yeah.
no, they're looking at her through a camera or either from a distance across the room.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, the radiology tech, there was another one in there. So tech 1 and 2 transferred her from her ICU bed onto the table, and then finished the scan, put her back on her ICU bed, and then the radiology tech called for transport. And Redonda had pushed the medication, said, "Okay, thanks." And she grabbed her precepty, they went to the ER, they did what they needed to do, and then they returned back to their neuro ICU, i.e. home unit.
Which wasn't a long period. We're talking like
T
15
t
minutes,
Yeah,
right?
exactly,
What I remember?
exactly. I mean, it was like bam, 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 bam. And then in that time, the patient finished up that scan. So when Redonda got back up to the neuro ICU, she pulled out the medicine because in her head, she had Versed in her pocket,
Mhm.
which that's a big no-no.
Yes.
You either
You need to
waste
waste
it.
it with a witness.
Yep. And so she couldn't waste it. Oh, one thing I left out, when she pulled the vecuronium, she couldn't find a scanner.
Oh, yeah, and that's where the lead walls came into play.
Yes, because scanners don't work in there. So that was a big deal for her. So she's like, okay, fine, I'm just gonna have to override it and document it later. How many times have we done that?
Yeah.
Not gonna lie. So she put it in her pocket, got back up to the unit. She said, oh, by the way, here's the patient's first aid. I haven't documented it yet. And when the patient gets back up here, we need to scan it and document it and waste it. Gave it back to that primary nurse. The primary, apparently, they had little lock boxes in their patient rooms
They
and
locked it up.
locked it up. Right. So,
At that point, didn't really look at it, just like, "Okay, cool, let's keep going,"
mm,
put it in the locker and
yep,
carried on.
the patient was finishing up the scan, calm patient. Transport had been called. Redonda was already doing another task after giving the Versed to the primary nurse when she hears on the radio a rapid response called, which, for those of you who don't know what a rapid response is what you call before you call a code.
Like,
But in
that's step 1, you have to follow step 1 before you do step 2.
Right, and anybody can call a rapid.
Mhm.
It's like a gut thing. In reality, it was really a code, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
So Redonda heard the call for this rapid response and PET scan. She was in the presence of the family.
Mhm.
I guess they were all in the unit kind of hanging out, and they all heard the call.
Gotcha, yeah.
And the patient's family even looked at her and was like, "Is that our patient?" And Redonda's like, "Yeah." So in her mind, she knew whatever happened, that Miss Murphy's gonna need an ICU bed. So we've got to flip the beds, like
Move the patient,
yeah,
yeah.
because she was in a step down bed. So that was what's going through her mind. So when the transporter was called to come pick up Miss Murphy to take her back downstairs. Oh, again, thing I left out. Before she pushed the Versed, quote unquote, which was really vecuronium, she had a conversation with the tech, the radiology tech, about where's the monitor. Oh, she doesn't need to be monitored. There's an order for the patient that doesn't need monitoring. But she even said in her head she knew she was given Versed,
Yeah,
and she had a hesitation,
yeah.
but
Once again, listen to your gut.
and the radiology
You're
tech's
a
like,
new
"No, no,
nurse.
she'll be
Listen to your
fine, she'll
gut.
be fine, we only have 10 more minutes before we can
Let's
scan
go."
her, let's
Yeah,
do
the
it, let's do it,
pressure
let's
was
do it."
on her.
Yeah, there was all kind of like, "Let's go, let's go." So she override, 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 like, "Are you sure you wanna waste? Yeah, are you
Yes,
sure you
yes,
wanna
yes, yes,
pull?"
yes.
I mean, it's like an automatic, "Yes, yes, yes, alright, give me the drug,"
Yeah.
How many of us have felt that pressure? We've hit those flags that says, "Ignore, ignore, ignore, ignore,"
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
She went through 5 warning alerts in AccuDose when she pulled the med.
I didn't realize there was an exact number.
5.
5, wow.
Yeah. So, the rapid response so, okay, so back I told you the order for Versed was put in at
Mhm.
2:47. So, this is how quickly it took place. Redonda, so literally right when the doctor put it in, and I'm kinda thinking it happened when she was on the phone, when she called the pharmacist and the pharmacist couldn't find the order. I'm thinking there was some conversation with that doctor
Okay.
that we don't are aware, because at 2:49 is when Redonda retrieved the vecuronium out of the AccuDose.
247 to 249?
2 minutes. Yeah. So there's
Okay.
no documentation of the administration time per se of anything other than when she retrieved the vecuronium. We don't know exactly what time she pushed it. But the radiology tech kinda said it was about 5 minutes after that, because she was having that conversation about, "Okay, where's the monitor? Blah, blah," that kind of,
Mhm.
"Don't worry, we don't need it, we don't need it, we don't need it." Okay, rapid response was called at 3:29. So we're going from 2:49 to where she pulled the vec. to maybe 5 minutes later when the patient received the vecuronium, which is 2:55.
So
This is
about 30 minutes.
35-ish minutes, okay?
Okay.
The PET scan was done, transport was called. Said, "Hey, she's not breathing." That's who recognized the patient wasn't breathing.
I feel like I need to start writing down my questions at the end.
I know.
Ah,
I'm like, insanity.
ah,
It's
ah.
2 radiology technicians and the transport person found it. Okay, rapid response was called at 3:29. There's a dedicated team. Redonda was not the team. She stayed in the unit getting ready for Miss Murphy to come back upstairs into an ICU bed. They got Ross back. They did 2 cycles of CPR.
Which is not a lot.
No, for someone who has had apparently vecuronium in their system for 35 minutes, I'm
Yeah,
like
2
shocked.
rounds.
But she was intubated. So that's
During that process, not ahead of time.
no,
During that
during
process.
the rapid, she was,
Yeah.
and I think that's how they got Ross back because it was a respiratory death versus anything
Yeah,
else.
I
You know
mean,
what I mean?
yeah, logically that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, so then she was transferred back up to the ICU room. So 3:29, 3:35-ish is probably, I imagine, when she got back up, started transferring. Now, we all know that transfer process, though.
Yeah.
It takes a while to get from unit to unit.
Yeah.
So who
Yeah,
knows?
heaven forbid there's an elevator between point A and point B. You're
Or
like,
2, or
you're just
elevator or
like,
2, yeah.
holy cow, like, come on.
So you can imagine, like, how this is unfolding, right? So the only time that we know that's truly documented was at 4 p.m. Redonda completed an internal incident report form. So between 3:29 and 4 p.m., the patient had ROSC returned, was intubated, and transferred back up to ICU. So patient was in the ICU room. What I imagine they said, I've heard room, I've heard a group of people. It doesn't matter. There were the providers that were in somewhere, an area, a room, I don't know, but there were a group of them
Mhm.
sitting around going, "What just happened?" Trying to figure out how she coded. At that exact moment, the primary nurse took out the medication because he was transferring care to another nurse, right? He had never transferred care to anybody before. This is an important point.
Yeah.
She was a float nurse. She's
Yeah.
a float nurse. He They had to move her from his step down bed to another bed. He took out the medication in the box that was in that locked box, looked down. Redonda had been drawing blood off of another patient and was about to tube it and was tubing it when that primary nurse comes in with her biohazard bag with her syringes and the medication and said, "Is this what you gave?" And Redonda's like, "Yeah, that's my bag." He goes, "It's vecuronium. It's not Versed." It was at that moment when she was like,
Her heart hit her butthole.
yeah. She in fact stated with us that moment was like the most painful moment for her to remember. Like everything closed down on her.
Yeah.
So she immediately told that primary nurse, take that medication to the charge nurse. She made sure the tube went off. Yeah, I don't know why that comment is important to me, but it
The
is.
blood got to the lab
The
on
blood was
time.
sent. But she immediately went up to this group of providers to say, "I know
This
what
is what
happened."
happened.
She owned it. "I gave vecuronium. It's right here."
Yeah.
Okay, so they were like, "Okay, all right."
That tracks.
So that tracks. And, in later conversations, I heard her say, the family was very let me get to that point.
Okay.
Okay, so 4 p.m., that happened. Okay. So now, it is going into the evening, right? Because that report was completed at 4. And then, the patient was settled, did everything. And then, about 6 o'clock, doctors start coming in and changing. So, that in a teaching facility, you have your nighttime residents that come on. And then if your attending is still there, you're attending and then the daytime residents leave, but they go into a room and they do report, which takes about 30, 45 minutes.
Yeah, because they discuss all the patients,
All
not
the
just
patients.
one.
Yeah, because there's typically on nights in an academic facility, you're going to have one or two residents cover that unit that are there all night long. And it's not going to be your higher level residents.
Right.
You do night shift duty
That is a
for a
fun
reason.
fact.
The attending is not there.
Mhm.
Not there. So, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, I guess there was, patient status wasn't, I guess they were doing brain activity and stuff because at 12:57 a.m., which would be 0057 a.m., 12:18, there was documentation that the patient was extubated. Okay. So going back in this 56
Do we
patient,
know why?
hmm
Okay.
um, the physician had documented prior to that, and this was quoted in the CMS report. I discussed the case with neurology team, and it's felt that these changes in the exam, her not being, I guess, oriented or like on the vent and stuff.
Yeah.
These changes in the exam likely represent progression towards, but not complete brain death. So, a progression of her history. Yeah,
Deteriorating.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, very low likelihood of neurological recovery. We made the decision to pursue comfort measures. And then patient was made a DNR, do not resuscitate. So they had that conversation with the family.
Mhm.
Patient was extubated at 12:57 a.m. or 0057 a.m. on 12:18. Again, this is still like
12:28.
12:20, yeah, within a 24-hour period.
Yes.
At 1:07, the patient was expired.
Okay.
Okay. So 12:27 at 1 a.m. Okay. So now let's clear.
12:28,
No,
right?
no, she died at 1:07 a.m.
Okay.
Okay. Let me set that stage for you again. When something like this happens on night shift, the attending is called.
Right.
The resident that's there is the one that calls the time of death.
Mhm.
There's a certain,
Because they're at the bedside.
yeah, yeah.
They're visualizing the time of death.
And they're the ones that have to say, okay, this person is officially dead. I remember there were doctors that I worked with in the ER saying, okay, well, they're not dead until they're warm and dead. Because I would always go, why are we putting on the blanket warmer, on the patient we just are coding?
Mhm.
Because they're not dead until they're warming dead. I'm like, okay. All right. So there's massive criteria, especially for brain death, too. Um, so that resident had to call the attending and say, and this is important because of the criminal charges that are coming, and said, because he documented that the changes in that neuro exam of the patient was likely due to the progression of her disease, not the vecuronium.
Now read me the quote again.
Okay, this is the resident, the nighttime resident documenting.
Mhm.
I discussed the case with the neurology team, and it is felt that these changes in exam likely represent progression towards, but not complete brain death. So
I feel like there's some vagueness there.
there, and well, that's a physician. I'm sorry, but they do. They chart just enough. I mean,
Because
things
when
are.
you read that to me, I don't hear progression of the disease.
You hear progression of the brain death,
I hear because of the events, this is where we are. That's what I hear. The first time you read it.
but again, so this is, and that, I mean, that's important because you're a
Yeah, yeah,
provider.
yeah.
You have a provider brain. I hear, you know,
Progression of what we were
yeah,
already started here
because
with.
they were at one point going, what the heck happened?
Yeah.
And then, we hear later, family fully expected her not to come out of the hospital for this.
Gotcha.
Totally. So to me, after hearing all of the after conversation, this was this was an expectation.
Okay.
She was admitted for a bleed due
Gotcha.
to a metastatic process.
Yeah.
I mean, when Miss Kennedy had her bleed and her stroke, I was convinced she wasn't coming home.
Right.
But I mean, thank gosh I was wrong. I was wrong. Okay, so that happened on 12/26 of 2017.
Yep. That's the resident, and then the doctor comes on the next morning.
So in January 20th, we're talking how many days? 22 days later, 23 days later. That was when she was terminated from Vanderbilt. 23 days later, they said, "You still can be a nurse, but you can't be a nurse here." Okay, January 2nd. No, January 20th. No, just January of 2018, 23 days later. She got a job. It took her a while. We talked about, she's going to talk about what happened, what she was feeling those days. But we do know that she did go work somewhere. It wasn't until August of 2018, August, 8 months later, that the Board of Nursing actually contacted her. So when she was terminated on that or 20th,
Mhm.
HR told her, "You're fired, can't work here, but you can be a nurse, and we have to report this to the Board of Nursing." Okay, any termination.
That's stressful.
So she did not hear from the Board of Nursing until August of 2018, 8 months later. The investigator called her, and she even said she was on a phone call for like 2 hours. Went through Redonda, and it's in the CMS report. Never wavered. I gave the wrong medication. I told everyone I gave the wrong medication. I gave the wrong medication. It is
She
my fault.
followed the protocol that's in place if this happens, because there are
Self-reported.
there are protocols, written protocols that
Self-reported.
if you make a mistake, these are the steps you follow, and
Yep.
she did that.
She's self-reported.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, it's supposed to be non-punitive, but their patient's death occurred. So where do you draw the line? Okay. So the Board of Nursing, after hearing her, said, okay, yeah, and this is why we spent a lot of time talking about the role of the Board of Nursing, because their job is to determine if she is a harm to the citizens of the state of
Yeah,
Tennessee.
society.
Did she have intent, and is she going to do it again? And the Board of Nursing told her, "There's no intent. I cannot find any intent, and I don't feel you're harm to the citizens of Tennessee." So they cleared her.
That was
10/20.
in August.
That was in August of 2018.
Cleared.
October 23rd, 2 months later, she, Redonda got a letter, like a certified letter from the Department of Health and the General Counsel for the Office of Investigation. So that's just an umbrella. If something happens, somebody's got to investigate it. So this was the counsel, the lawyer for that branch. And in writing, very clearly, says it's all good. So the Board of Nursing didn't take her license away. They said they agreed. She was not at fault. There was no intent. She was cleared of any wrongdoing whatsoever. October 23rd. Now, there are various ways that this next part happened. No, I didn't want to kind of hone in on that because we wanted to talk about like the post.
So there's a gray area.
There's a
coming up.
gray area here.
Gray area coming up.
There's some that say there was a specific whistleblower person that walked into CMS, the Centers for no, walked into the Department of Public Health, which is a overseeing legislative body, and said, "Wait, you need to look at the hospital.
Okay.
You know, there were some issues. You need to look at it." There's another place where I found where it wasn't necessarily a person per se, like someone from Vanderbilt didn't come into. That's like what the what's it called, conspiracy is, that
Mhm.
someone walked in. From what another story I've heard, or version, is that there's just a checkbox that the Department of Public Health has to check before they officially close the case, and that is, what is the weight that's on the hospital and what is the weight of the error on the nurse. So that's where this happened.
Okay.
So they didn't have a good answer. So the Department of Health did a surprise visit to Vanderbilt, showed up in Vanderbilt, You can only imagine what's happening.
Mhm.
So this is almost a year later. This is October 31st in 2018. We're talking, you know,
Yeah, almost
t-
yeah,
uh,
10 months later.
11. It's
Mhm.
basically, so they were there for 8 days, 10/31 to 11/7. And they pulled everything. And this is the 56-page letter of their findings that I found. Okay. So, um, CMS comes in and they investigate the hospital on site. And in an interview with like one of the regulatory officers and the senior quality and patient advisor at 140, the biggest thing that they found that was the problem was there was no real report of the event. They couldn't find, like,
Like in the charting.
right.
Right.
So,
Because Redonda did her internal report,
right.
but there was no
Those are
nursing note, no provider note, like
nothing was on
truly summarizing exactly what went down.
right, right. So, and then you remember the resident when he called the chief attending to say, patient died, that they don't sign the death certificate. Residents don't. It's the chief or the attending physician. And so the resident apparently just said, there was some hearsay or some conversation about a nurse giving a wrong medication. There was a medication error, but I don't know that for a fact because, again, this was the 1 a.m. resident. Redonda was gone, and he had received report and had, I can only imagine what was going on. So the chief attending, when he signed off on the death certificate, nothing was mentioned about this medication error. Okay, so all of this was happening. All of this, they were investigating, and there's a lot of conversation about like what RT said. Like my thing is, couldn't RT not see that this patient was breathing? There were so many stop gaps.
Mhm.
But again, she hit 5 override flags. So in late November of 2018, CMS finally releases the report. Here's the findings. Okay. And these things are what make it criminal.
Okay. I'm ready.
There is no record of the medication administration,
Okay.
meaning becuronium. Okay.
Mhm.
No notification to the medical examiner as the result of death. So
Okay.
the attending signed the death certificate, and the cause of death, which is a box, was natural, whatever, because she had metastatic
Right.
issues. Nothing was
Nothing
on
about a
there.
med error.
Yeah. And so that's what's called a sentinel event. When any hospital, if a patient dies, that's a big thing. The hospital has an obligation to self report that to our regulatory bodies.
Mhm.
And then, so that's big. So the medical examiner didn't know that patient died because of vecuronium administration. So therefore, the medical examiner did not contact the Social Security office and say, hold up, don't dispense benefits because this might be a coroner's case. A coroner's case is a big deal.
Yes.
That means there's some litigation involved. They don't know, there's something other at play here.
Mhm.
And there are certain instances where it's an automatic coroner's case. Like
Right.
you have to report deaths. You have to call the coroner for every single death.
Right.
Now, coroners will say, especially if they're under 18, automatic autopsy.
Automatic.
And if they're under 62 and no causation, like chronic comorbidity, whatever, automatic. And then any suspicious,
Violence.
yeah,
Automatic. Yeah.
automatic coroner's case. That means they're doing a full blown autopsy.
Mhm.
Okay. So, so
Not a family requested autopsy.
no,
Yeah.
that's totally
Totally
so
different.
no record of Beck given. Medical examiner was not notified of medication error. Social Security office was not notified of medication error. No report of the sentinel event. So therefore, so when a hospital has to, if they report a sentinel event, they have to automatically, when they submit that event or say that this happened, they have to have in place what's called a corrective action plan. This is what happened. We know this. We're doing this right now. Stop gaps. We're doing something right now. There was no corrective action in place on file. Plus, Vanderbilt had not reported this event.
Mhm.
So that constituted state fraud. So
It's
that's
a
what
big
bumped it
deal.
over to the criminal court. Okay. November. That was November. Not until February 19th of, no, February 4th of 2019, Redonda's name was released as the nurse that gave the medication. Now, I
2019.
remember this. I remember hearing it be a nurse, but I had heard she was ER nurse. She was in CT. The patient was bucking on the CT scan. I can see that bucking,
Yeah, you
pushing.
got a totally different story
Yeah,
initially. And
yeah,
I didn't hear about her until later.
yeah.
So,
Okay,
yeah.
so she was identified on 2/4. She wasn't arrested until 2/20 of 2019.
Whew.
2019. That's when she said she didn't know she needed a lawyer until she was arrested.
Yeah,
Almost a year and a half after.
yeah.
Okay, 327. Again, remember it went over to criminal court when they released the findings in November. Prosecutors decided we have enough. We're going to go after Vanderbilt. Then that was in March. So Vanderbilt knows, like, again, a lot of this is my supposition. I'm trying to be stateful and just
Yeah,
state the
you're
facts.
trying to be unbiased.
But prosecutors begin to release the evidence they found when CMS was at the hospital. Okay?
Which, again, this is all online.
All online, you can pull it.
This information we did not interview Redonda about. We truly
Nope.
wanted to focus on the aftermath, but we're giving this to you to understand
The
why we
process.
asked the questions we asked Redonda to bring change, because this was such a pivotal moment in nursing.
Okay, so she had gotten fired in 2017. This was 2 years later. Her name was released. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
She had a lot to process. Not only did a patient die as a result of something she did,
Yeah, she's already having to hold that weight.
one of the biggest things that I took away was she said, not only was this the worst day of the patient's life and family's life and my life, but it also happened in front of a new graduate.
Mhm.
That's what hurt her a lot. Okay. It wasn't until they have criminal evidence in March. Vanderbilt doesn't release a statement until August of that same year saying, here you go. Here's Redonda. Kind of like that's what I interpret it as.
Serve her up on a silver platter,
Yeah,
like, ooh, take her as our sacrifice, I guess. I don't know.
right. Okay, so you remember the Board of Nursing and the Department of Health cleared her, officially absolved her in writing October 23rd of 2018. It wasn't until September of 2019 the Board of Nursing reversed its decision and yanked her license. A year after they cleared her in writing. They cited unprofessional conduct, abandoning or neglecting a patient who required care, and failing to maintain an accurate patient record. Now, that patient abandonment thing, that kind of threw me because the primary nurse never really transferred that care because that's what reports for. And
Yeah.
as a float nurse, when you go in to do a task for a patient, you don't get a full report from the
Assume
nurse.
full care.
No, you don't. So again, where did that really lie?
Yeah, that is questionable. And honestly, when you were going through your story, one of my questions was interventional radiology. The people standing there are RNs, correct?
They weren't there. That was my question. It was the day after Christmas. It was just 2 radiology techs. That's why they had to call Redonda, the float nurse for that ICU unit, to push the medication. Because that's what IR nurses are there for.
Okay.
I mean, this was also actually during the day. Remember the
Yeah.
PET scan order was put in at 2 p.m.
Okay. That
Yeah.
makes more sense because I was like,
Remember it was
but now I have so many questions, like snowball questions, like why was that, Not
Yeah.
just the day, but
Yeah, where was everybody?
where's the nurse in IR?
Yeah. That's what I want to know. It's an academic medical facility. They're doing stuff all the
Especially
times.
for an ICU patient. I know she was not like at the time the critical of the critical, but she's still an ICU patient. How can
Mhm.
you just pawn a patient off on a non-nurse?
Yeah. I know.
Okay, so many follow-up questions that we'll
So,
never truly have answers to, but we are learning from this.
yeah.
We are learning.
So another important date is December of 2019. Again, she had had her license yanked in September. In December, Tennessee investigation, they actually accuse Vanderbilt, the hospital, for purposeful delay and hampering of the hospital. Even the grandson is on record as stating there was a cover up. So now, let me just say,
Grandson of the family
yes,
of Miss Murphy.
yes. Okay, let me just say that this was 2019. The event happened in 2017, right? In May of 2018, even before she was cleared by the Board of Nursing and before the Department of or Public Health, there was an article put out in the American Journal of Health System and Pharmacy. There was an article written, and even the vice president at the Institute for Safe Medication Practices, ISMP, that's the important thing because she says go look at all of their documentation. They are quoted as saying her organization has long considered ADC, Acudose, that overrides potentially problematic. So they knew there were issues. Okay. And it is even said one of the big problems with automated dispensing cabinets like Acudose or Pyxis is that sometimes staff are overriding without having an order. There's no verbal order written down, or they're anticipating an order, so they go get it. How many times have we done that?
Well, yeah, and just your career in the ER.
Oh, yeah.
There's no, what is it called? The meds populate under the patient. What's that called again?
Profiling?
Yeah,
They're not
patient
profiling.
profiling.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the ER, your patients are not profiled with their meds because
It's
you
so
have no
fast.
clue. Yeah, you have no clue what they're going to need in the
And it
moment.
happens so
So
fast.
you have access to the entire Pyxis.
Yeah.
And it basically just tracks what you're doing. It
Yeah.
doesn't tell you what you're allowed to do. It tracks what you're doing, which is very different than other areas of
But
the hospital.
and there's some are, flags put into play on
Yeah,
meds, like,
there's like high risk
"Hey,
stuff.
you
Do you
indicated."
want this?
Yeah, like, yeah, "You need another nurse."
Check.
Yeah. You sure are how much of
But
that are
those are
you
pretty
gonna really
rare.
give, and how much you
Yeah.
but, and she talks about this term, confirmation bias, because so many have things, flag up. And it's just an automatic, we
Yeah.
see what we wanna see. "Okay, no, I don't care. No, no, give me the drug. Give me the drug. I've got stuff to do. She's gotta get this medication. We gotta get this test done." Confirmation bias. It's every day. Not only do we have now alarm fatigue, we now have confirmation bias that we have to make sure we pay attention, that we get rid of that bias. Okay. So that's it. It became a criminal. They got the district attorney literally got an indictment against Redonda.
Against Redonda, to clarify.
Right.
Against Redonda, not against a hospital,
Not against a
against a
provider.
facility, not against a department, a unit, a team. It was against one person, Redonda.
Yep. And it really came down to medication administration standard of practice. She did not meet the standard of practice as set forth by the Board of Nursing for the state of Tennessee. She failed to, and she owned it.
Yeah, she will still. I mean, y'all will hear her say that is a huge thing that you need to educate yourselves on. So I won't dive much into that now because we are going to talk about it. But yeah, that is kind of that was the straw,
Yeah.
of what, I don't know if it's make or break depending on what side of the case you stand on.
That was the
That
one thing
was,
they
yeah.
couldn't give an okay, but this is why.
Yeah.
Because that's why it's so important. We have to know what our practice standards are for each state. And if you've read our South Carolina practice standard, they're a hard read.
They are.
So I even had to go back because there is a word I didn't know. It was a Latin word. And she even talked about, that's a whole different language, legalese, just like we talk about
Legal
medicalese.
jargon's very different than medical jargon. And, we teach, put your medical jargon in layman terms. What
Yeah.
lawyer puts lawyer jargon into layman terms?
So
Like, it's not like that. It's not written like that.
so there was something that happened that, Redonda appealed, and it was raised
More
judicata.
recently.
No, during this.
Okay.
Like, right after she was,
Okay.
arrested, lost her license in September, criminal charges, right? So, because and I'm like, I don't, cause so it says, raised judicata with collateral estoppel.
Okay.
What now?
Habita, habita.
Yeah, so
English, please.
I called my sister, who's a lawyer, who used to be a prosecutor. Had to make sure my brother-in-law, ex-brother-in-law, because he is a defense attorney, ambulance chaser. I needed to make sure his name wasn't anywhere on the charts, which they weren't. But I needed to know what raised judicata and collateral estoppel meant. ESTOPPEL. What is that word?
No biggie.
And she said because it had to do with the Board of Nursing. And she filed this appeal based on this for the Board of Nursing. And basically what this is that it's almost equivalent to double jeopardy. In other words, the Board of Nursing said, "Hey, no, you are not liable. You're good. You're fine." But then they went back and reversed it, basically trying her for a second time when they had found her essentially not guilty.
Yeah.
So, but she lost that appeal because there was really no raised judicata before. You can't. I mean, the board didn't have all of the facts. It wasn't until CMS went into Vanderbilt to find
Yeah.
all of those issues that surrounded by a systematic problem. But the nurse was the one that did it. And that's,
Yes.
we were just talking about this, So again, a lot of this was there was no documentation of the medication. The medication wasn't even ordered. Okay, let's get back to this. So even if vecuronium had been ordered and it was documented and she gave it and the patients, it would still be the nurse's fault because
She has
she
to know what vecuronium is. She
and,
has to know the mechanism of action, what it's going to do to
and
the
she has to
patient.
know, hey, no, doc, this is not right. Let's
Yeah.
rethink this. This
Yeah.
patient needs. So you have to know
Be
what their
P's
intentions
and
are.
Q's.
Yeah. So I mean, literally, yeah. It is us. We are that
Yeah.
final
Yeah.
determination. Notice the pharmacist wasn't called, even though she called him.
Mhm.
In fact, he was a witness for the prosecution. What killed me was there was no witnesses for the defense
Yeah.
because her team knew that no matter what expert they got on that stand to defend her, the prosecution team would ask one question. Did Redonda meet the standards of practice for medication administration as stated by the Board of Nursing in the state of Tennessee? And every single one of them would have to answer no. So she was like, what's the reason? So this is where all the notoriety, like where it became well known because it had never, ever before that ever. A nurse has never been prosecuted on criminal charges in a court of law for a medication error before with no intent.
Yeah.
It was a massive uproar because what it would deter would be for us in good faith to self-report. Well, if I'm going to get fired and thrown in jail and charged with negligent homicide,
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell anyone about it.
Yeah.
Why would I do that?
Nurses are one of the most trusted profession year after year on all the surveys.
And that was another thing was the moral integrity of Redonda. She owned it.
Yeah.
She never and to this day, she will shout it from. In fact, we even during our initial phone call, or was it during the interview? I don't remember. That I felt uncomfortable even talking about
saying the word felon.
Felon.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Yeah, I'm a felon. I'm a felon. I can't vote. I can't carry a gun. I'm a felon. I can't work."
Yeah.
I'm like, it's unsettling. And so what happened was 5 to 10,000 nurses would show up on the courthouse steps in Nashville. Yeah. And apparently, Redonda said, "I don't know why I said purple was my favorite color, but I did." And they all were wearing, like, purple T-shirts. They had, like, a T-shirt thing. Like, I think I even bought one, and I don't remember where it is now. Like, I was so
You were
angry and
invested, yeah.
incensed that she was thrown under the bus. But now after talking to her and hearing her moral courage,
Mhm.
her professional identity, um, she recognized it. She's like, "No, they're right." So, I remember okay, so the trial wasn't scheduled. So remember they officially, called her out in what was it? December of 2019? Yeah. That's when they said, "Okay, we've got it it's her." So that was when Tennessee board said, "Okay." Um, and then Redonda doesn't get her official Board of Nursing hearing until 2021, but that's on hold. COVID hits 5 months later, okay? So 12/20, Tennessee said, "Yep, we got some issues going on here." COVID hit in April of 2020. The case was scheduled. The criminal case against Redonda, the state of Tennessee versus Redonda Vaught, was slated to begin on July 13th of 2020 because of the pandemic. Now, remind you, at that point, she did lose her license. So
Mhm. She's not
whatever
practicing.
job she had
Yeah.
before, she no longer has it. She's living with this guilt every day of her life. And she admitted it kept her in the bed for 6 months straight, 6 months. And she had several so during all of this, before the court date, she was offered several pleas to plea bargain, to plead it, and not go to trial. She refused every single one. And this was the mic dropping moment for me. Her husband was so just beside himself, and he never came to court with her, and she said, "I didn't want him to." And when he asked her, "Why would you jeopardize our future? Why would you jeopardize your freedom?" And she said, "I got tired of telling the truth behind closed doors." Boom.
Yeah,
I'm like, "Nuh-uh." And
yeah.
this also resonated with me, and this is why we are talking about this. And she said, "The expectation is perfection when you graduate from school. And in reality, there's no perfection at any point, at any point." That just kind of floored me. She wasn't, and because of COVID, the trial didn't happen until, I wanna say March of 22 no, June of 22? Yeah,
Yeah, that
um,
sounds right. I
June
know
of
it's 22.
22, and she was found guilty, which we all were, again, completely incensed about.
Mhm.
And then, I wanna say 30-ish days later, the judge gave her sentence. Now, remember, here's the picture: 5 to 10,000 nurses standing on the courtroom steps in purple, screaming because they're angry, they're incensed. This is the historical moment.
Mhm.
Should have never happened. She should have never been found guilty. Families in the room in the courtroom every day. The family hearing this,
Yeah, watching it, reliving it,
reliving
hearing the
this.
stories,
It's
yeah.
horrible, and can you imagine, as a family member, hearing a nurse that is respected, gave my mother a medication, and the horror of that death. I don't know if anyone truly understands that death is it's a painful death. You feel everything.
Mhm.
Your respiratory drive, all of your muscles can't move,
Yeah,
but you can still feel.
yeah,
So her family is feeling this.
yeah, rightfully so.
So the judge sentenced her. Now, she was found guilty on negligent homicide and, I should know this, but, I don't
She
have
had
it.
3 charges and 2 of them she was found guilty on.
Mhm,
Negligent homicide.
the biggest one was, reckless homicide.
Hold, please.
Yeah,
Let me find
we should know this.
criminally negligent homicide and gross neglect of an impaired adult.
Yes. So that also kinda umbrellaed the patient abandonment, but she was so that carried a weight. That carried a heavy sentence. However, the judge felt mercy on her and gave her 3 years probation. But still, as she said, she's a felon.
Mhm.
And again, every one of those nurses were incensed and angry and yelling, but they were happy about the probation.
Yeah.
So she actually made the point to tell us about how she could not bring herself to leave that courtroom after her sentence was read. She just sobbed because she knew that that family had to get up and walk through
Walk
all of
through the
those
crowd.
nurses celebrating when they are still grieving their loved
Yeah.
one. So, I mean, it's pretty heavy. It's
It
a
is very heavy. It's a very heavy topic. It's very multifactorial. There's a lot of emotions at play. And
lots.
not to downplay any of it by any mean. I can't imagine what Miss Murphy's family went through, what she personally went through. Can't imagine that. As a nurse, that sounds like my worst
I mean, but
nightmare.
everything she did, I can tell you in
Yeah.
my 30 years of practice,
Yeah.
I have done it.
And I think that is why this is so important to us because we don't want you to be the next Redonda Vaught.
Yeah.
And I've
And she
never met.
doesn't want you to be the
Yeah.
next her.
Yes.
She doesn't like that this is what she's famous for.
Yes. She will in the coming weeks provides beautiful insight and knowledge
Perspective,
and
like her. Oh
perspective.
my
Yes.
gosh.
And again, it's not like we don't want to praise a felon. I mean, that's not our
No.
goal here. We want to learn from her
Yeah.
because she has learned so much and been through so much. And I truly care about, and I think you agree, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I truly feel like she cares about Miss Murphy and her
Oh,
family
she does.
and doesn't want any other family to go through that. So I think that is why she is valuable
Mhm.
to us here in this space that we can take her knowledge and put it into
But
practice.
she never ever lets us
Yeah, she
forget
does
the
not let us
cost of
forget.
what happened.
Yeah,
She reminded us several times
several
that,
times.
it wasn't about her. The family Miss Murphy lost her life.
Yeah, no matter what Redonda lost, they lost so,
Yeah.
so, so much more. So
It's a
we
big lesson. So this hopefully, if you go back and do some more, I mean, it's all out there. You can find it. If I can
yeah.
find it, anybody can
Mm.
find it. Um It is insane the failure of the system,
Yeah.
and we'll talk about that at the very end, what did happen
Mhm.
eventually and, what and I think that's why we wanted to bring this
Yes.
out so bad, and the perspective we wanna have on it is not we're bashing hospitals, we're
Yeah, we're
not.
not we don't wanna bash hospitals.
But you need
We
to
don't wanna scare you out of nursing.
right.
We want to empower you.
Mhm.
We want to give you all the facts. We say every week, real talk, real tips.
Yep.
Here it
Here
is.
it is,
Proof is
baby.
in the pudding. Like, we want you to be successful in your
And
career
safe.
and safe. And that really, the whole success and safety in nursing just go hand in
Yeah.
hand.
There's
Have
really
to.
nothing and it's basically a technicality. Not no, it's not basically. I mean, but the culture and workarounds nurses are I
We're expected
yeah, cuz
to make it happen.
yeah, you got to get stuff done.
So we caution you
Yeah.
in doing that, and we've learned so much. I mean, we have years of
Oh my,
experience
even just
between the
talking to
two of
her.
us. We have learned so much, and I know I have changed my practice just from this experience and
Mhm.
knowledge that she's given me. So yeah,
All
that's a
right.
heavy one. That's a heavy one. Coming up in the next couple weeks, you will
Hear from her.
see us interview and hear her thoughts straight from herself. It's not us portraying them in any way we think
Nope.
they should be. It is us
Her.
sending our questions, your questions that you sent us, and us all learning together as a community.
Yeah.
So
And I mean
we're excited.
she she's amazing.
Yes.
She has amazing resolve. She still has that integrity. And that's why she's doing what she's doing.
Yeah, and hopefully she can snowball change and we can be in that snowball with
Leader
her.
change. All right. All right.
So as always,
Thanks
thanks
for
for scrubbing
scrubbing
in.
in.